Begin the current Daf Mesech Gitin Daf Samach Zayin. Begin 13 lines down at the top of the Amud. But the Gemara goes back to quote a teaching related to the halacha of our previous Mishnah. We were speaking about making shlichus. That's really the theme of this parak. And we spoke about a machlekes in our Mishnah regarding what the halacha is when you tell a bunch of people to do something. Tnu get lishti. Are you saying that they could be a bezdin, like 3 people? That means to say they could appoint someone else, or like Rabbi Yossi said that no, they even if they're bezdin hagodesh Rabbi Shloimy, they have to do it themselves. So we had a teaching of Shmuel, who he paskin. The last words we said in this Amud from the previous Daf was he holds like Rabbi Yossi in one area, but by regarding Oima Amr he disagrees. So the Gemara gets into interesting conversation regarding why he paskin like Rabbi Yossi, and then regarding the greatness of certain Talmidei Chacham. Today's daf. Someone discussed in today's daf that the reason why Shmuel paskin like Rabbi Yossi, because nimuka imay, he has his reasonings with him. The concern that we actually mentioned on the previous daf of certain cases of Shema Tisker Edom. The reason why we said that it's really kosher to tell them to do something, to tell someone else, but it shouldn't be done, is because then the woman herself might hire witnesses to tell people to say, oh, my husband said you should do it, which that would obviously be false, and therefore we're concerned to allow a shliach to tell another shliach to do something else. The halacha about when you say kulchem, I want all of you to write a get for my wife, let's say the 10 people, what the halacha is, and then actually machlekes of mana hareka kulchem or mana inika kulchem. When he's counting, he said, okay, you and you and you and you and you, I want you guys to write a get for my wife. Is that actually going to be specifically that he wants all of them, or actually would not be all of them, which that relates to mana kulu mana miksasayu. That's just a bunch of people, and he's counting certain of them, but not all of them. What does that mean? Is he want specifically those, or that he doesn't necessarily want them all? And regarding how should a get be written, or kulchan, or kol chad v'chad ben chayin, or all of them, or every single one of them, which that's what the Gemara discusses, that kol chad ben chayin, chasem kol trei ben chayin, regarding when you say to write or to sign, does it mean one from them or 2 from them regarding chasima? And then we begin the next parak, the 7th parak, and we discussed regarding Misha Achzeh Kardiyakis. If someone took in a certain amount of fresh wine, can make him go crazy, and regarding what halachas would be regarding the laws of Gitin. So begin the current Daf Samach Zayin, 13 lines down, where the Gemara says Gufa. The Gemara quotes the teaching we just said, just a line before, that Amar Shmuel said, Amar Rebbe, that Rebbe said halacha Rabbi Yossi, the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi. The Omar that he says, Mili lo mimtrin l'shliach, because in our Mishnah, Rabbi Yossi had said that, no, I disagree with this, the Messiah that Rabbi Kiva is saying it from jail, in the name of a mayor, that when you tell 3 people to get leishti, they could tell others because they're a bezdin. No, even if the husband said to the bezdin, I go to Yerushalayim, give a get to my wife, they have to learn how to write, and they have to write, and they have to give it themselves. And Shmuel ruled like Rabbi Yossi, and the reason for that is because he held like Rabbi Yossi that words cannot be given over to an agent. Although we said that actually in the other halacha he disagrees with Rabbi Yossi, he holds that in the case of Amr, when you tell them to tell over, then actually you could. But in the regular shliach, as we say, so on that, I'm a lafan of Reb Shimon bar Rebbe. So Reb Shimon, the son of Rebbe, said to Rebbe, as we said this in our Mishnah, Reb Meir and Chanina Shoinai, who had the shlichus from Rabbi Kiva in jail, disagree with Rabbi Yossi. What did Rebbe see fit? Mr. Shmuel was quoting the name of Rebbe. What did Rebbe see fit to say halachas like Rabbi Yossi? So Rebbe said to his son Rabbi Shimon, "Shaseik b'nei shaseik, shvag manzin, be quiet, my son, be quiet." Rabbi Yossi, you didn't see Rabbi Yossi. Had you seen him, you would see that he had his explanation with him to give reasoning for everything that he said. He was able to resolve everything. So if he said a pshat, then I'll say halacha like him, because I know every time I would ask him something, he always was able to explain it. The time I learned the brisa, that Isi ben Yehuda, very interesting brisa. Isi ben Yehuda, he counted the praises of the sages. And he goes through some of the great Torah giants that we had and explains what was their unique praise. Reb Meir was a chacham v'sefer. He was a sage and a scribe, as the Gemara says in Seit of Chafim and Aleph, that Meir said, I said to him, I'm a scribe. So he was actually a sefer. Rabbi Yehuda was chacham likashayirtze. Interesting terminology. Venevil is a chuchim, but that's not what it means here in this context. The Aruch says here on the side of the Gemara that when he would open up his lips, he would be what's called the Reish Medabrim. We know Rabbi Yehuda was the first one to speak. So whenever he wants to, he's the chacham. Or Rashi says when he wanted to be like calm and in his words, then he was a chacham. Taisha says chacham like shirtzim means he was more than Remeir. Says maybe Rabbi Yehuda, maybe Remeir was sharper, and he would ask. Rabbi Yehuda was more calm, and he would come to conclusions. Rabbi Tarfon was a gal shalagoizin. Here's a pile of nuts. What does that mean? So Rashi brings some others to Reb Nassan, just like a pile of nuts. If you take out one of them and they're all in one pile, you take out one, they start all falling one on the other. So to Reb Tarfon, if a student would come and ask him something, he would bring a raya from a pasuk, from a medrash, from a mishnah, from a halacha, from a Agada, all together. Everything was just compiling down. That was Reb Tarfon. Rabbi Shmuel was chanus miyuzenes, which it takes between two girsayis, either mizuyenes or muyuzenes. So either it's a terminology of food or it's a terminology of being fortified. But Rashi says that it's a store that the wine is constantly there ready, where the storekeeper doesn't have to tell to the buyers, hey, wait till I bring for you. It's all fortified, it's all stocked up. So too, if someone had to learn something from his mouth, he was always ready, he always had the whole sugya, oiskar, but they asked him a question, he was able to give him the whole thing prepared. That was Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Kiva was a oitzer bolum. Place brings two gears, so it's either oitzer bolus or oitzer bolum. But what does it mean that he was he's a clothes store, a storehouse? But Rashi brings from Abbas to Reb Nassan that what was Rabbi Kiva compared to? So to a pauper that would take his box and go out to the fields. If he found barley, he would harvest and put in his box. If he found wheat, he would put in his box. If he found beans, if he found lentils, put in his box. So everything, whatever he's there, he's putting into his box. When he comes home, so he starts like selecting every single species on its own, but it was all poured into this box. And then he starts separating. That's how Rabbi Kiva, when he learned from his teachers, he heard a pshat in the chumash, a pshat and a pasuk from his rabbi, and then he learned halacha, and then he learned medrash, and then he learned agada, and then he started going over them and to learn them until it was organized in his mouth. He didn't say, okay, I'm just going to learn chumash, and then I'm going to learn medrash by itself. No, he learned it all together. And then when he became a great chacham, then he made the whole Torah as specific matbeyas, meaning specific areas that he organized, medrash, sifri, sifra, each one independently. And he taught it to himself and to his students, halachas for themselves, agadas for themselves. So Rashi says it seems to him that oitzer balam means like closed. Each one has its own closing, each independent partitions, like when you do by these large boxes that you put wheat over here, you put barley over here, you put lentils over here. So that was Rabbi Kiva, that he was oitzer balam, that basically he had he would store them in independent containers, but because he learned it all together, angemacht, and then he went and he separated them. That was Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Yochanan Nuri was kupat hareichlam, was the box of the peddlers. What does that mean? So the Avos Rav Nassan explains over there that just like a peddler who comes to the city, so if they ask him for balsam, he has it, yes. Ask him if he has this cinnamon, yes. This spice, yes. So too, if a person needed to ask something on Chumash, he would respond. Gemara, he would respond. Medrash would respond. Agada, he would respond. Now, Rashi points out this shvach is not the same thing as that of Rabbi Kiva, because Rabbi Kiva first learned everything all mixed together, and then he organized it, and that's why they called him Oitzer Balam. But Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, he had everything independent, and like a peddler, if you asked him, he had whatever you wanted to buy. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, he was kupashal besamim. He was a box of fragrant spices, meaning, what does that mean? So the peddler, because this is his profession, so he has a lot of different types. He has the belts and the orcs and the whatever, and he has each one tied independent to be prepared for someone who's asking. So Rashi says that this is similar to that. The only difference is that the Kubash al Rechem has all different types, and here it's sounds like it's specifically regarding spices. Mishnah Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov was kav, was measured, meaning he didn't teach so much like the rest of his colleagues. But what he said over in the base medrash was v'naki, was clean, meaning he was refined, and Allah is like him always when he says something. Rabbi Yossi, this is the main reason why we wanted it. We're talking about why Rabbi passing like Rabbi Yossi was nimuka imay, because his explanation was always with him. He said something, he told it to you, explained it to you, and therefore he said it was appropriate to pass like Rabbi Yossi. And Reb Shimon was toichin harbe. He would grind a lot, meaning he learned a lot. Umaitzi kima, and the Gemara is going to explain what that means, and he releases a little bit. So time we learned in the Brisa, what does that mean? Mishakeach kima. He would forget a little bit from his learning, umasha maitzi, and what he was extracting, meaning what he was forgetting, what was coming out, in a maitzi elasubin, he was only letting out the bran, which he was only forgetting things that he didn't really think were really halacha like that. And so too, Reb Shimon said to his students, Bonai, and people say this over like time, Bonai, my sons, shonu midaisai, learn my measurements, learn my Torah, because my measurements are terumais, are the elevated parts, from the elevated parts of Rebbe Kiva. So he says, from all the teaching, the primary Mishnayos of Rebbe Kiva, I selected and I elevated, and that was a selection after selection. So therefore, that's the teachings of Rebbe Shimon that were the select of Rebbe Kiva. So again, that we just brought that interesting price in only because to explain why, which we said Shmuel paskin like Rabbi Yossi, which was really Shmuel in the name of Rebbe, and that he passed like Rabbi Yossi. And we say, why Rebbe paskin like him? He said, Rebbe said to his son, says because you didn't see him. If you would have seen him, you would have understood that whenever he said a pshat, he had his reasoning. Now going back to the primary halacha of our previous Mishnah, so Gufa, we had mentioned that Amal L'Shnayim, if someone said to two people that Imru L'Sefer V'Yichtav, tell to the scribe, and he should write, and tell to such and such a person that they should sign. This is the halacha of Omer Amru that we mentioned in the previous daf, that we said Shmuel didn't paskin like Rabbi Yossi. He paskin that you could do Omer Amru. So regarding this of telling a shliach to tell someone else, so here he's telling them to have two people sign. So we have machlekes, which we quoted on the top of the summit from the previous daf also. Amar Rav Huna Rav. He says kosher. This is kosher. But this should not be done amongst the Jewish people. So Amalei Ula Rav Nachman and Rav some say it was Rav Nachman Ula says, wait a second, the kosher. If you're saying that this is kosher again, either because that mili could be mimsur l'shliach, you could give over words from one agent to another agent, or like we said, because this is specifically, even the old mili generally cannot be mimsur l'shliach, but when you Omer Amru, when you tell him to tell, I'm telling you to tell to aid him to sign, that would work either way. But if that's the case, I might like Tassos to be so. Why should this not be done amongst the Jewish people? Well, you tell me it's kosher. What's the problem? So Amalei said to him, and this is how we also related to the previous daf regarding the concerns that we would run into. Chayshina, we're concerned shematisker edim. We're concerned that maybe that the woman's going to hire witnesses to say in the name of her husband, to the scribe to write, and to witnesses to sign. So we don't want to have agents telling agents, because we don't know if this agent came from the husband. The wife might have hired someone to say, my husband said. So to avoid that, we're saying, no, don't be giving over words. Where it says, Michashina, are we really concerned? But Vatanyul in the Brisa says, Eidim achasum al stei mekach. If you have witnesses that are signed on a purchased field, what about get isha, on the get of a woman? So once they recognize the signatures, the sages were not concerned to say, oh, maybe they signed falsely. Why not? You tell me that maybe she might have hired someone, so maybe she hired someone to sign falsely. Says the Gemara, no, a very important principle. An action people won't do to sign falsely or to testify falsely. Dibura ka'amri. Words they will do. In other words, they'll tell others to do it, and the others will think that the husband commanded. So a person himself won't want to do something wrong, But to tell a client of Artel, you know what I'm saying, it's just to tell someone that he would do, and therefore we're not concerned when we see a get or shtar mekach, but regarding to give over words, that we would concern that she would hire someone. However, says the Gemara, what's with the following case? If he said to two people, Imru l'seifer, tell the scribe, v'yichtem, and he should write, va'atem chasaimu, and you yourselves should sign, where now there's no more concern about Shemet Tiska that the wife might hire, because since they're not signing, only if they heard from the mouth of the husband himself, because he said atem chasaimu. So here's where we have a machlekes that we mentioned, which obviously, and we mentioned this in the previous daf, that this is not like Rabbi Yosi, and the same thing is like Shmuel, because this is based on the principle of V'omer Amru. So Rav Chizdami says, Kasha b'leisi asa, it's valid, but it should not be done. Why? Because it's a really, like Rashi says, a gzera ha'atu ha, that even though really in such a case there's no concern because the witnesses themselves are being told to do something. So there's no handing over and there's no hiring, because the witnesses themselves that are signed, no one would sign falsely. It's only when there's an intermediary, a medium. But if we allow this case, we might have come to allow in the case when he tells the shliach to tell other people to sign, and then we're going to run into that problem. So therefore, even such a case we would say should not be done. But Rabbi Chana says no kosher, but it's valid and it should be done. Like Tchili could give such instruction because again they would not sign falsely themselves. And this was a machlekes with many. Rav Nachman kosher b'leisi asa, it's valid but it should not be done. Rav Shesha kosher b'leisi asa, no, it's valid and it should be done. Rabba kosher b'leisi asa is valid and it should not be done. Rabbi Yisrael kosher b'leisi asa is valid and it should be done. As a continuing comment base, they could apachlu that those who switch around this last set of opinions that of Rabbi and Rabbi Yisrael. But either way, that they disagreed regarding this halacha. Now, the Mishnah had said that Amala Sarah, if he said to 10 people, kiss will get, to write a get, so the Mishnah had said that depends on the wording that was said. So if he said kisbu v'tnu get lishti, one person writes and 2 people sign. If he said all of you should write, then one writes and they all sign. That's the halacha of the Mishnah. So still to the Brisa elaborates, turn about on the Brisa. Amal Asar, if he said to 10 people, kiss will get utnu ishti, write in the plural, write the get and give it to my wife. So echad kaisava they call him, one writes for them all, meaning because he said to all of them write, so one could do it for them all. But if he said kulchem kasaivu, all of you should write, okay, so then they all have to, but again you can't have all writing. Echad kaisav mamekulim, one writes in the presence of them all, so they're all considered writing. Let's say he said, "Haylichu get leishti," in the plural. Hey guys, bring this get to my wife. So echad meilech they kulam. One does it for them all. They don't all have to carry it. But if he says, "Kulchem meilech," I want all of you to bring it, then echad meilech b'mam kulam. Obviously, they don't all have to be holding on to touching the corner of the get and bring it. One guy brings it in the presence of them all, meaning they all go with him. Now, Ibarlo did the following question: if let's say he didn't say kulchem, didn't say all. Because if he said all, they would all have to go. But what he did do is mana oisim. He actually counted them. So he started going 1, 2, 3, 4, and he said, "Write a get for my wife." Now, what's the halacha? So what's the question? So Rashi explains. And the fact that he counted them all, he said that even Shimon, Levi, he went through the whole thing. So his intention was for the ones that he counted, or maybe that since he didn't say kulchem, all of you that are counted should write, so you don't need to have them all. What's the halacha when he actually counts them? So it's a machlekes. Rav Huna Amai says mana enikol kolchem. If he counts them, it's not like saying all of you. The Mindirema Amai says mana enikol kolchem. When he counts them, it's like all of them. And says the Gemara that Amar Rav Papa, it says v'loi pligi. They actually not even disagree. How's that possible? Hadamana kulu. It depends if you counted them all. And this depends if he counts only some of them. And the Gemara says, wait, one more step. Amri lalahai gisa, some say this way. Amri lalahai gisa, some say the other way, as Rashi explains. Some say this way, meaning, if he counts them all, obviously he's particular regarding all of them. If he counts only some of them, then he was not particular even on the ones that he counted, where that that he means to say 2 from those that he counted should sign. He was just coming to exclude the rest that he didn't count, that they just can't be from those who are signing. But not his intention was not that all those that he counted should all sign, because since he didn't count them all, so it was verified that it was just a difficulty on him, and he left his original intent, and therefore even the ones that he counted don't have to sign. It's only some of them. That's one mahalach. That it's only when you count them all that you're makbid kulchem, but if you only said some of them, then you weren't. All of the people that were there. Let's say there were 10 people there. Right, but when he's right, so if he counted all of them, there were 10 people, and he counts 1, 2, 3, and he counts all the way to 10. Why he counted them all? So according to this lahaigi, so this pshat is saying that okay, that means to say you want every one of them. That you're saying 1, 2, 3, 4. I want you to write this get and give this get to my wife, whatever. So if you're saying it and you counted everyone, you mean everyone. But if you counted 1, 2, 3, and add like 5, you stop. So Rashi has an interesting way of how he says it. He says, obviously the guy is like, okay, he's not interested in everyone to do it. He just wants you guys, not these guys. But even from those guys, Lav Dafri, he wants all 5 of them. That's one mahalach. Then V'amrila, some say lahaigi, so the other way around. No, if he counted some of them, he's revealing his intention that these are the ones that I want you all have to sign. When he counts them all, since he didn't say kulchem, so obviously it was not particular that they all have to sign. He's just saying that because if he meant them all, he would have said kulchem. He's just saying in front of this number that he's saying this announcement, but not that he wants them all.
Why did he enumerate? Obviously, he meant to have them all signed, I guess.
He's saying the second shot of kulchem, right? So Rashi says something like, but he does have a right. Why didn't he say kulchem? So why has he counted them? So Rashi he wanted to say in front of a certain number of people. He was making sure that we have a minyan here. Farach zog dus, ich will sein, dass du a minyan. 1, 2, 3, okay, Rabbi say, I want to write a get to my wife.
If one of them refused, it's not a get?
Oh, so that's we'll see. It depends if he's makbid on kulchem. That was the halacha of the Mishnah that said that it's not going to be a get. So that depends on which side, which interpretation of the Gemara. And that's actually where the last Gemara on this parak ends, on this note. Asking Rabbi Yehuda instituted that begita, that the kulchem, meaning by a get that a person says in the presence of many people, we have to be concerned that maybe he's going to say that my intent was all of you. And if they don't all sign, it's going to come out that the get is going to be batal. So what did Rabbi Yehuda institute? They should write that this is what he told us. Kesayvu, write it. Oy kulchain, either all of you, meaning that one of them writes in the presence of them all. Oy kol chad v'chad milchain, or any one of you, that even if the other one's not there. Chasumu, sign. Oy kulchem, or all of you. Or oy kol tremenchen, or any 2 of you. Oy vilu, bring it. Oy kulchem, either all of you. Oy kol chad v'chad milchain, or every one of you. He instituted to have that, to make sure that the guy's not going to come and say, oh, my intention was, no, it should have been up to get, that we see that, no, you said any one of them, or one in the presence of them all, but they don't all have to sign. However, Amar Rabbi has a problem with that. He says to the contrary. I don't like what Rabbi Yehuda was massacring, because Zimnan the goyz le dibure. Sometimes the scribe will cut short his words. Vaman, he's going to say only the first half of the statement. He's going to say, kulchain, all of you. He's not going to say, kol chad mochain, every one of you. Basalib Sula, and it's going to come to invalidate the get, because maybe one of the people will not be present when it's being written, or he won't have all of them signing, and that's going to be problematic. The Rabbi said, Kesayvu, you should only have them that say on the get, Kesayvu, that he said to write, Kol chad milchain, every one of you, Chasaymu to sign, Kol trei milchain, any 2 of you, Avilu kol chad milchain, you should bring it any one of you, and don't say the word kulchem at all, because if you do, you might only say that, and actually might be stuck with that first half, which then he can invalidate. Say, well, I see Shimon wasn't there, why didn't he sign? Get bottle, and that would create all types of problems. Yeah, so that's what he said. It would be possible if you had this element of kulchem. An shall return to the 6th parak, Mesechus Gitin, which spoke about primarily this halacha of shlichus, of creating a shlich halacha, shlich lekabalam. With that, we begin the 7th parak, which continues on the related vein of shadim that we spoke about in the previous parak, but it's also obviously related to this halacha of a husband creating a shlichus for writing and giving a get to his wife, which the Mishnah begins, parak misha achazai. Meisha achzai kurdiyakos. If someone was afflicted with kurdiyakos, what is that? So it's the name of a demon that possesses a person when he drinks a lot of fresh wine that was just pressed. Vaman, he says, kiss would get ishti. Right, I get to my wife. Lo emakum, he hasn't said anything because his consciousness is not settled. He's on some trip now, whatever, this and that. And he's not, what?
Is it like drunk?
No, it doesn't sound like drunk. It's in Talmudic times, definitely, they had all these different types of things that they would say, the medicinal or whatever it was. But it sounds like he's not, as we'll see in the Gemara, that as Taisa even says, even if he says to write and to give it, he hasn't said anything because his das is not there. He's not all there like they say.
Das is not there. What would it be if somebody's drunk?
Right. You want to know, right? What's right? It sounds because Rashi says it's a name of a demon. So you have to know what type of demons are when you get drunk. It's inner demons or whatever. You have to know. But definitely, it's as the Gemara will say, it's a shindalad. Omar, let's say he says, "Kas v'get le'ishti." He says, "Write a get for my wife," and then after he says to write a get for my wife, then v'achza kurdiyakas, then this kurdiyakas possesses him. And then he says, "No, don't write this get to my wife." So So his later words are nothing. I mean, we will write the get because now that he's backing out, it's only because of kurdiyakas. Nishtatik. So Rashi explained this case is not going back on the kurdiyakas. It's just we're talking about a regular person that became mute because of an illness. So he can't say to write a get because he's mute. But Amalei, they say to him, "Nichtav get le'ishtacha." Shall we write a get to your wife? The Hirkim Bereisha, he shakes his head. Yes. So we check him, we inspect him 3 times with other things. In other words, we ask him things that would be appropriate for him to respond. And if they see that his thought is settled, that Amar al lav, he says on a response that should be no. He shakes his head side to side the way people usually go no. Val hein hein, and yes, mean he shakes his head up and down, which is how people usually shake yes 3 times for every single thing. If we see that we understand he's responding in what is yes and no, so if he shakes his head regarding writing the get, he shakes his head up and down, then we go ahead and we write and we give a get to his wife. Now, the Gemara says, my kurdiyakas. What is this kurdiyakas that possesses this man that we say that, okay, what he's saying now is not halachically significant? So Shmuel says, denachse, if it bites him, in other words, he drank from it and he senses chamra chaduta de matzarta, from the freshly pressed wine. So the Gemara says, why are you saying achaz or kurdiyakas then? But listen, why didn't you just say mishna shacha yain chadash? If the new wine is biting at him, so that would be more clear. So the Gemara says, Hakamash, what's teaching us is the harucha, that this spirit, this demon that possesses a person when he does such an action, kurdiyakas, shma, its name is kurdiyakas. The Gemara says, lamai nafkamina, why do I need to know this snapple fact that to know that it's a kurdiyakas, well, what does it make a difference? So the Gemara says, no, the kameya makes a difference for an amulet that you could make the spirit take an oath in its name. You have to know how to go ahead and combat it in this spiritual entity. So therefore, it's important to know its name. So the Gemara says, "My asuse." What is its healing? So you see, interesting, that there is this spiritual healing for an amulet, but then the Gemara says very practical. Like someone called me up yesterday, something that was happening to a kid and this and that, and I gave him, you could check the mezuzahs. That's one thing, and then I said I could give you a practical answer also. So the Gemara seems to be doing the same thing also. There's a kameya. You want to know practical? As Gitin can see Phil, I'll tell you what to do. There's some practical remedies what to do, which is bisra sumka, that you take lean red meat, a gumri on coals, v'chamra marka, and you take wine that's diluted with a lot of water, and that will heal this person who has this kurdiyakas. Similar type of a healing, of a remedy, Amar Abaye says, Amar li my mother told me, l'shimsha bas yoima. Someone has an illness that is grabbed a hold of him because of the heat of that day, with heat stroke. So you take kudza demaya, you take a jug of water and you drink it. Astre yoima, if you have it for 2 days. So sikure, you should do bloodletting with the horn. Bas tlasa yoima, if you have it for 3 days. So that's the same type of remedy we said for kudiyakas. Bisra sumka gumri, you take this lean meat on coals, v'chama marka, and this heavily diluted wine. L'shimsha tikta, let's say you have a heat stroke, you have from that's been already for many days, that's old already. So lesi tanagulta uchamti. You should bring a black hen, the likra shasiva erev, and you should tear it crisscross. The liglache lemitziasa dereshe, and you should shave off the middle of the head of the sick person. Veloisve eleve, and put this black hen on top of his head. Kanchiyasi definitely have a lot of fun with this one. The nintche eleve, and you should put it on there ad the until it sticks. V'leinchis v'leikim b'maya ad tzavare, and you should go down and stand up in the water up until his neck. Ad the cholosh alma eleve, until he starts feeling faint. V'leimed, then let him swim. V'lesalik v'leisim, and come out and sit down. That will be healing for this old heat stroke. V'loyin, if not, either he can't do it or it's not working. What he should do is lechel karti. He should eat cress. And v'linchis v'leikim b'maya tzabari, again, he should go down and go into the water up until his neck. Ad the cholosh alma eleve, until he starts feeling faint. V'leimed v'lesalik v'leisim, he should swim and come out and sit down. That will heal it. Now the Gemara explains l'shimsha, for the heat stroke that's 3 days. We spoke about 1 day or 2 days of 3 days. So that we said was bistra sumka gumri b'chamre marka. Like we said before, that's lean meat on coals and diluted wine. So that we know. It's just that the Gemara wants to say that the inverse is lasalga. If someone's sick because of the cold, right, which means the snow, so then it's actually do the opposite. Opposite of heat stroke is from the cold. You do bisra shmeina agumri. You do fatty meat on coals, b'chamer and undiluted wine. So therefore, it's the exact opposite. The Gemara brings a story related to this. Rav Amram Chasidah, Rav Amram the pious one, kev mitzaron le'bei Resh Galusa, when the servants of the Resh Galusa, the head of the Jews in the diaspora, would bother him, because since he was pious and he was ascetic, he was a parish, and he was machmer on them when it came to things that prohibited. He said, usa, 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 that they couldn't stand. Everything is usa, so they would bother him. So have a mignile atigla. They would make him sleep in the snow. The next day they told him, what does the master want that we could bring him? Obviously the guy was freezing all night. So Amar, he said to himself, look, honey, these people, anything I'm going to tell them, they can do the exact opposite. So Amar said to them, bring me lean meat on coals, and diluted wine, which is actually good for heat stroke, but not good for the cold. But he knew that they would do the opposite. So they brought for him fatty meat on coals and raw wine, which was exactly what he needed for being in the cold all night. Now Shama Yalta was the wife of Rav Nachman, and she was the daughter of the Nasi, and she was the wife of the Av Bezin. She was very distinguished. As the Gemara says in Chulin, that Rav Nachman was the son-in-law of the Nasi, so his wife heard about this, and she brought him into the bathhouse, who he was freezing cold, and she put him into the water of the bathhouse, until the water of the bathhouse turned to have a dama, and it was red like blood because of the red sweat that came out from him because of the fatty meat and the undiluted wine. That's what made it all red. And his flesh was had these huge splotches on him. Now Rav Yosef actually, when he got freezing cold from the snow, he would get himself busy and work b'rechaim with a mill so that he should sweat, get heat up and sweat, and that would be a way of recovery. Rav Sheshes Asik b'kshuri, he would get involved with carrying heavy beams and loads. And Namai says, "Gedoy l'malocha, how great his work, shemechamemes es baleha, that it heats up. It's the one who's doing it. Again, the sweat was a good way of getting rid of all those toxins in his body." Now, going back to the Resh Galusa, which we said that he had some unsavory characters that worked for him, as we said in the previous incident. So, Amalei Resh Galusa Rav Sheshes. The Resh Galusa, the one that was in charge of the Jews in the diaspora, said to Rav Sheshes, "My time Aleisod Margaban, why doesn't the master come and eat by us?" Amalei says, "I'll tell you the reason. Limalu Avdi, because your servants are not refined people. The Chashida even Menachai, they suspect regarding giving a limb from a living animal, which is forbidden to be eaten. Amalei, Rish Kalus said, Miyema, who says such a thing? My servants would do that? Amalei says, Hash the machvin, I'll show you right now. So Amalei, Rav Shesha said, L'shamit, his own attendant, Zil Gonov, go steal, go to the kitchen, steal, Aisli Chad Kara Mechevasa, bring me one leg of the animal that they're preparing right now. So actually, he brought it to him. Amalahu, now Rav Shesha said to the servants of the Resh Kalusa, Adamili Hadmidi Chivasa. Organize in front of me the cuts of the animal that's being cut up. I want to see, show me bring out from the kitchen, show me these pieces of meat that you're cutting up. So I see Tlas Kari. They brought him 3 legs, and they brought it in front of him. Amalu said to them, Habala Shalosh Raglaim Haba, what, this animal had 3 legs? What's going on here? Where's the 4th leg? So Pasik, they broke off an Aisachad Alma. They brought a leg from a regular animal. They brought it in front of him. Amalei L'Shama, he said to his attendant, the Gaba, now bring out the one that you stole, bring out that leg also. So he put it out there. Amalei said to them, what, this animal had 5 legs? So the Resh Galusa said to Rav Sheshes, okay, you got me. If that's the case, because they're suspect, let them, in other words, let it be in front of the Gaba of the master, let them organize the food with a mashkiach, and the way it's permitted, you'll know that it's kosher. Okay, so the Gaba was there, he oversaw the whole preparations to make sure that there was alt kusha b'yusha. But then, so Amalei L'chai, Rav Shesha says, yes, okay. But then, Kiribu Tako Kamayu, then they went and they served the plate, the table in front of Rav Shesha. They brought it out there, steaming hot. Vaisik Hamei Bisr, and they brought in front of Rav Shesha's piece of meat. They see the kamei, and they put in front of him ristino dechanka chamsa. What is that? That's a small bone that's on the hip of the thigh. Where if a person swallows it, he chokes. Now, since Rav Sheshes was blind, he couldn't see, he'll eat it, and he'll choke. So they wanted to be done with this Rav Sheshes finally, these slaves of, these servants of the Resh Galusa. But, gashashe, like a blind person does, they're actually very into touch. He touched around the piece of meat, and he felt that bone. So Vashakli took the whole piece and karcha besudre. He wrapped it up in this kerchief, puts it in his rekel. Now labas the achel, after he ate, Amri lay. So they said to him as Gitin Daf Samachas and Aleph, Ignevlon kasa de kaspa. There was a silver becha, a silver cup that was stolen for us. Meaning, because like Rashi says, they saw him wrap up something in the kerchief, and they wanted to check what was this. So Bahadi de Kama'aini Ba'asi, when they were checking his garments, frisking him, Ashkachu de Krucha Besudre, they found this piece of meat wrapped in a kerchief. So Amalei, the servant said to the Resh Galusa, Chazimar, let the master see. He didn't want to eat. He just wanted to bother us. You see, he put the meat in his jacket. Amalahu, so he said to them, no, mechal achli, don't worry, I ate. But by the time of the chivara, I tasted a white taste, meaning the meat tasted like it had leprosy. So Amalei, that had blisters. So Amalei, they said to him, Chivra la'avon ha'idna. It's not true. We did not slaughter an animal today that had any blisters. So Amalei, he said to them, Bodku beduchte. Check in the place of where the skin is. You could check where this thigh of the hip was. You're going to find in the skin that it's white because of this fleck, this leprosy that it had. Because the Amar of Chizda said, Uchma bechivra. If you have a black spot in a white animal, or bechivra b'uchmaso, or if you have a white spot in a black animal, lakusahi, it's considered a flaw in the meat, and that's why the skin turned white. Badik, they check in Ashkachu, they found that taka mamish, right over where the hip bone was, they found a vasa fleck, a white spot over there. And therefore it says that's why I couldn't eat it, because it was ruined. Now Kika Nafik, when he was leaving, so Korole Bida. So what the slaves did, they dug a pit that he should fall into. And they put a mat over the pit that he shouldn't realize what's over there, what's underneath. They said to him, let the master go and lay down on this, let him go relax and fall into the pit. So Nachale Rav Chizda Ma'achayre. So Rav Chizda snorted from behind him like a sign. So Amalei Rav Shesha said Linuka to a child that was there, psukli psukach. In Talmudic times, when they wanted to know what's going on, it says, tell me the pasuk you're learning. Amalei said to him a pasuk in Shmuel Beis. Neteilach al yeminach oy al smolecha. Veer to your right or to your left. So Amalei Lashame said to his attendant, Michael Chaz, what do you see? Amalei says, Tzifisa de Shadya. I see that there's a mat laying down over here. Amalei says, Hodimine, turn away from this. Go either to the right or to the left. Labasa de Nafik, after he left, Amalei Rav Chizr said to Rav Sheshes, how did the master know that there was this trap? Amalei says, first of all, Chada the Nachlimar. You snorted. So I realized something must be going up. Moreover, the pasuk Yunuk Psuka, I heard the pasuk in the Chah, which says go to the right or the left. Moreover, the Chashidi Avdi Dleimali. These inappropriate slaves are always suspect that they're up to no good, and therefore I realize that I have to be careful. Thank you to any time. Those things.